All right. Well, the game version of the nightmare has ended for the 2024-25 season for the three of us. But obviously, most of the stream will concern the New York Giants. As of right now, they have positioned themselves to what it looks like to be running it back with the same regime, the third overall pick, and no tunnel. No, I almost quoted somebody who used to be on the show, but no light at the end of the tunnel. Excuse me. So we're going to have a very interesting offseason, but it will start with a very interesting discussion, which I think Donald and myself feel very much similar. I'm gonna just go around with first thoughts. Luca, you can include your Jets thoughts too, because they're in a interesting position as well. Donald, obviously, Happy New Year. Um,
Yeah, your man.
what are your thoughts on this big blue disaster?
I think it's summed up by our draft position. We're drafting third in a two quarterback draft. And the two teams in front of us are quarterback needy teams. So that kind of sums it up. This organization is a mess. Um, I've never known an organization that not just revels in failure, accepts failure, but also doubles down on it and is also incredibly combative with people such as the media, such as content creators, such as anyone that would dare question why the Giants are so horrible. Because they are not principally concerned about the win-loss record. They are principally concerned about jobs in high places. That's what they're more worried about. They're more worried about protecting jobs in high places. And these jobs in high places, John Mara has given out to family members. He has given out to people that have completely no qualifications for this job. The general manager is a disgrace. He embarrassed the franchise during the Hard Knocks. He's had two of the worst drafts you could possibly have. He's left us barren. He embarrassed us with the Saquon stuff. He embarrassed us with the Daniel Jones contract. He embarrassed us with how they were caught completely unprepared for free agency last year. And we're considering bringing him back. Now, Brian Daboll, I don't have nearly the issue with, to be honest. I think that he's been dealt a horrible hand. But I believe that he's an offensive coordinator, not a head coach, because I don't like the way he treats his assistants, as seen last year. I don't think that he is capable of overseeing a whole team. I think he's an offensive coordinator. But even then, we're only averaging about 10 points a game. So, I mean, the whole thing is a shit show. It's a shit show. It's an embarrassment. But the biggest embarrassment is not actually Joe Schoen, and it's not actually Brian Daboll. It's John Mara. He is the biggest embarrassment. He is. Because he is the one who sends out the media shells to do his bidding. He is the one that asks Pat Hanlon to contact giant content creators to shut them up. And he's the one that is in charge of things such as the ridiculous pricing to the centenary year merch. Some horrible pricing, like $260 for like just a completely plain sweatshirt that just had that just had 1925 on it or whatever it was. I mean, he is overseeing an organization like such as the Medium Pepsis, and he is the one that's in charge of this. He's the one that helped build the worst stadium in football, one of the worst stadiums in sports. He's the one that's in charge of all this. And he's the one that's so tone deaf that doesn't have a handle on his own organization where the fans are done. They're exhausted with this. They are pissed off at this. And he's thinking doubling down on it. And the reason is not because they've done anything, not because that they've shown anything that resembles someone that you would want to give them the keys to the kingdom. No, it's not that. It's because he's worried about the optics of him once again firing somebody in their third year, because he's been doing it as a trend since 2012 onwards, that it's just been every bad decision after another. So he's almost scared now to make a decision. So he's just not going to make a decision at all if he can get away with it. We can only hope that someone gets in his ear tomorrow. Maybe Tish gets in his ear tomorrow and says this is a joke. Because if this is left to John Mara, he will leave it as it is, and he will continue to oversee just a moribund franchise that's completely lost, completely tone deaf, and has almost nothing to look forward to.
Yeah, I'm going to go through some comments before we get to Luca. And speak of Sir Brian, who's in the chat, Luca's going to showcase something. Actually, you know what? Before I read the comments, I want to showcase something to Luca, to Donald now, because Donald didn't see it last week. So we did, last year, we did a little segment called Prank Gifts, right? Me and Luca got Brian a Doc Rivers green shirt, because Doc Rivers is such this great coach for the Bucks. We got Luca a JETS Justin Do the Suffering shirt. So what Luca did and what Brian did, what they got me for a prank Christmas gift. Luca, you want to show this to the people?
I love it.
Eagles shirt.
That's an awesome. That's a nice jersey, man.
So that's what they got me to remind me of the pain. What's up to Mick Crash, Brian, Li Yankee King, on Popular Opinion Sports? As I said, I'm going to go through a couple of comments before we get to Sir Luca. His thoughts on everything overall. Joe Schoen is going to have to get creative. I hate that word creative because that kind of reminds me of Brian Cashman. But nonetheless, in the sense of Joe Schoen, we'll have to get competitive. Luca, no celebratory shotgun for the Jets win. Yeah, he's not very happy about that. Worry Joe Schoen's going to set us back even further. Yeah, me and Donald have that same sentiment.
And by the way, Li, I'd want an apology because I did say at the start of this year that Joe Schoen is a disaster as general manager. And you replied saying he's a really good general manager. So talk about an about face.
Luca,
I guess he also did an about face the one time that he said Daniel Jones was a top 10 quarterback. I remember that. Yeah. I'm not gonna let go of that one.
No. You almost have no right to post, to be honest.
Jacob says Donald's. However, if Stefanski says not sure if they go quarterback, well, I am with the assumption that they will go quarterback. Just for me not to get hyped up. Oh, they might not take a quarterback. Oh, they got Watson. No, I'm going to stay with the terrible assumption that they're going to take a quarterback. Like Donald's in that assumption because this is the Giants and this is what they do.
Well, but also they need a quarterback.
Yes, they do.
I mean Watson he's horrifyingly bad.
Yeah,
and hurt. And a mess, and he's got all these nasty off the
mess.
He's got all the nasty off the field shit attached to him as well. So, but the one thing working in our favor is that awful contract, and they can't really get out of it. So,
no.
maybe they think about just doing what they did last year, maybe signing someone like Jameis Winston to compete with them, and then build the roster around that. And then obviously it means that either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders drops to us, which is great. Thank God that the Patriots won today. I do appreciate that because it has at least climbed us up a spot to make things a little bit easier. But still, the fact that we're in this position at all is embarrassing.
No, it absolutely is. And I'll throw you another nugget for you to some of you to think about is obviously you said maybe they resign Jameis Winston. Maybe he doesn't resign there. Just as I said, just a conspiracy theory to think about is maybe he doesn't resign there because they told him to sit for a injury because they wanted to tank with DTR and Bailey Zapp for the pick. So again, I have my own theory and my own tinfoil hat, but I'm just prompting something. And I'm okay with Daboll and Shane saying so you don't have to have the Giants look more of a shit show than they are. They are a shit show. They're more of a shit show than you actually saying, LI, because you're like I've said this on so many occasions. John Mara is more about being fair than being like actually right about something.
Yeah.
Because you know what the excuse is? Oh, well, Dave Gettleman got 4 years. Joe Shane got 3 years, and he has not put like we're going to go into the specifics about drafts and stuff like that. Like we don't need to super compare these GMs, but like what he's done in 3 years has totally set the Giants backwards. Like they were at, again 9 wins, then they were at 6, and they were at 3. Usually people would get fired under those pretenses, but the New York media is kind of dumb. I mean, like if you're sticking up for Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, yeah, like of course, but I don't think that's the pretense under what LI is talking about. And the New York media partner in Barkley, but the fall off was 2018. No, I want to say it was 2015 when you let Tom Coughlin just waltz out the door. And Shane can't rebuild. He's stuck being a contender. Well, LI, tell me the quarterback that the Giants should go after to be a contender next year. GM Joe is and will be the ruination of the Giants. Thank you very much, Mick. You are absolutely correct.
Alex, have you seen the Giants' opponents next year?
Oh, sorry. What was that about the opponents?
Have you seen the Giants' opponent?
Oh, it's fucking brutal. You look at the home schedule. It's awful.
I would struggle to find 3 wins next year. So we got the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Commanders, the Packers, the Vikings, who are incredible right now. San Francisco will be better next year. Got the Chiefs, the juggernaut Chiefs. You got the Chargers, who are awesome. You got the Lions. Forget about it. Then you got the Broncos. Oh, man. The only winnable games you would consider maybe the Raiders, the Patriots, the Saints, and the Bears. But we don't know what the Bears are going to be like next year. They might be better. So
exactly.
I mean, look at that list of opponents. And we might be tanking for another quarterback next year.
And even the fans are wrong on the fall off points to the 2018 draft again. Don't agree. We won't know if someone's safe out until after Monday, but I think Shane is the only one guaranteed safe. Supposedly, the reports are that they're going to let Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, probably more so Brian Daboll, explain the vision on Monday. So, as I said, what's up to Kenny? GM, instead of trading down and getting picks and players, they will take an average quarterback like Sanders and nothing will change and will set the organization back another 5 years. I wouldn't say that's the scenario that I'm worried about. I would actually like get Shedeur because that's a direction. The Giants haven't really chosen a direction if we really think about it. Well, I mean, I've said this in the beginning. I'd rather Daboll stay, but obviously he's coaching UNC. I remember that horrendous take by LI. I hear Aaron Rodgers might be available for the Giants. Absolutely not. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Bill Belichick's coaching college next year.
Yeah, he's in UNC. I don't know, Kenny. I can't assume that because we're at 3, and just because Shedeur has Dion and all these other different things, like for right now, Tennessee has thrown out the smokescreen that they like Cam Ward. Of course, they could do that because they pick number 1 overall. But I'm sorry, I can't like sit here and try to positive myself and like believing that the Cleveland's not going to take a quarterback, or at least that they won't try. So if we get Shedeur, great, but it still doesn't like help me that Joe Shane's going to be the general manager of this football team. Either,
No.
Daboll is fired or whatever. Before I get to more comments, I've been leaving Luca out of this. Luca, give your first thoughts to the people.
First of all, Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year to Giants and Jet fans alike. This has been quite the arduous season for both teams, and I can't imagine a worse possible year for the Giants and Jets together as a collective. If you don't mind, Alex, I'm going to start briefly on my Jets. I'm not going to say much.
Go ahead.
This season was an absolute disaster. I originally predicted Jets to win 10, 11 games and win the division. I was wrong. The Bills ended up winning the division with a little bit less talent, as predicted. Some people said, but the owner destroyed the season. He could have fired Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh last year. He didn't. He chose to fire them in the middle of the season. I do blame Jet fans partially because there were a lot of Jet fans and some content creators who said last year that all Robert Saleh was needed was a quarterback. The team was 2-3 before they fired him, and there were more issues than just the quarterback, and had to do a lot with coaching. So I was right all along. And I said this, I swear I said this multiple times. I said Aaron Rodgers needed to overcome not one, not two, 3 levels of incompetence for the Jets to be anywhere near successful. They could have hired Harbaugh or Vrabel. They didn't. Mike Vrabel's going to go to the Patriots now. And the Jets don't have a GM or head coach in place, and are now using the 33rd team to identify their proper head coach, GM, and whoever the freaking quarterback's next to me. But to transition to the Giants, I see some similar issues between both of our teams. First of all, the biggest problem is it's kind of 1A, 1B. Ownership. Biggest problem is ownership. 1B, which is the sub-segment, the non-football people making football decisions. Now, for the Jets, that is Woody Johnson, the owner. You also have Brick and Jack Johnson making having say based off Madden ratings, which is absolutely fucking ridiculous, if you want my honest opinion. You also have Jaime Elhai and Ira Axelrod, lawyers for the Johnson Company, in the Jets organization where they should be making decisions and having insight, which they shouldn't. For the Giants, you have John Mara. Steve Tisch is not really that involved, but John Mara, as Alex said perfectly, is more about what's fair to people instead of doing the right thing and understanding boundaries and all of that. You also have Tim McDonald. Alex, what role does he play?
He's the nephew. He's like some sort of he's in Joe Shane's ear a lot. He's not assistant GM. I want to say he's like a personnel director of some sort.
All right, personnel director. Let's go with that. Personnel advisor, personnel
player
director.
Personnel, director of player personnel, I think it is.
Chris Mara.
He's right, yeah.
Chris Mara as well. Non-football person making football decisions and a job in that department nonetheless. So that's, I think, the real problems where they start. And with the Jets and the Giants, same things are happening. You're giving incompetent people too long of a leash. Now, that happened with Daniel Jones. Again, not to bring up the whole Daniel Jones scenario, that happened with Daniel Jones when he could have, when the Giants could have drafted a quarterback last year. They didn't, because I'm not going to blame Tommy DeVito himself, but Tommy DeVito won a few games down the stretch. The Giants could have had Drake May, but obviously Drake May is succeeding in New England right now, or at least has had a successful rookie season, and he'll get a new coach. Luckily, it's not great. Let's be fair. It's not great that Drake May is going to be going into a second system with a new head coach. But what the Giants have ensured, in my opinion, and this is if they draft a quarterback next year. Again, it's a possibility. You never know. I'm going to throw this out there, that the Giants probably could draft Jalen Milroe at the end of the first round. They trade back. They get a few picks. They draft Jalen Milroe. I know Giants fans are not high on him. I'm not high on him. He's more like a project. But what the Giants have ensured is continuity with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, obviously the wrong pieces. And next year, if the Giants draft a quarterback, what you're ensuring, in my opinion, is that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll won't just have jobs for next year, but the year after, and possibly the year after that. Because ideally, you do not want to fire a head coach after a quarterback's rookie season, because that's how you ruin a quarterback. That's how they go through multiple systems. I could talk about many different quarterbacks who have went through multiple systems. The biggest problem John Mara has had, in my opinion, with the fair stuff, he takes half measures. 2015, he fires Tom Coughlin. Jerry Reese builds a terrible roster, misses on Eric Flowers. Eli Manning is still producing like hell. He was, I think, a Pro Bowler that year. I remember watching that season. Odell Beckham's on fire. Can't get the offensive line right. Can't get the defense right. They're one of the last in the league. So the scapegoat, Jerry Reese. I'm sorry, Tom Coughlin. Jerry Reese, you can stay, pick the next head coach. He picks the next head coach, and that's Ben McAdoo, an offensive coordinator. First season makes the playoffs because the Giants spent a shitload of money in free agency. Janoris Jenkins, Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, Olivier Vernon. Those guys didn't work out. They basically, what Jerry Reese did was he used free agency to try to overcome his bad drafts.
Yep.
That's essentially what happened. So he splurged, said essentially like, okay, this is like an all-in year for us. We're going to kind of sacrifice the future. Giants go 11-5. They're eliminated in the wild card round. Okay. 2017, they signed the likes of Brandon Marshall. Odell Beckham's back, obviously. They were supposed to repeat that success. They didn't. So what happens at the end of the season, or I should say in the middle, is Geno Smith starts, Ben McAdoo gets fired, Jerry Reese gets fired. Let's head to 2019. Pat Shurmur with rookie Daniel Jones and GM Dave Gettleman. Dave Gettleman sells out Pat Shurmur. Shurmur, you're gone. Gettleman, you can stay. You can pick your next head coach. It's Joe Judge. Dave Gettleman gets to retire, and Joe Judge is later fired. So, in my opinion, and I think this is a famous quote. I don't know who said this. Indecision is worse than the wrong decision, or is worse than decision at all.
No, you're right.
Yep.
Absolutely.
John
right.
Mara, in my opinion, from an outside standpoint, John Mara's best idea, or if he's learned anything over the past couple of years, is that stop taking half measures, assert your direction, self-reflect. I'm firing both the general manager and head coach. It's not the most attractive destination, let's be fair. The Jaguars, Ben Johnson could land in Jacksonville to Trevor Lawrence. Patriots, you got a ton of cap space with Drake May. The Bears, Caleb Williams, they'll be having a new coach. Looks like Pete Carroll maybe. Or Cliff Kingsbury. It's not an attractive job whatsoever. But also, to get off of the organizational point in terms of personnel, GM, head coach, the problem that the Giants share with the Jets is looking after social media, optics. And I'm going to tell you a story. This is not my story to tell. I'm going to tell you it. I know two content creators. Let's Talk Jets Radio. They used to be with the Jets in terms of credentials. They used to have credentials from 2015 to 2019 in training camp. And there's a reason for this story. It's not because it's Jets. It's a point. Now, as I said, training camp credentials. I'm trying to find a place where to start. So, at the time, I would say 2018, they were running, Kevin and his friend Jay were running a magazine called NYSF, or New York Jets Magazine. And they were basically not less critical of the Jets than they should be, right? So, Kevin emails the president, team president Neil Glatt. And he says, what do you think of the newspaper releasing? Can you help us promote it? And it's sold in many different places across New Jersey. Neil Glatt comes back with NFL lawyers, a 3-page letter saying, essentially, we don't like the color green you're using. We don't like what you're putting in the article. Okay. Let's go to 2019 and let's go to just some of the other things. Listen, that's how the Jets love their headlines and shit, whatever. They ended up quitting after 2019, but this is the point where I'm comparing it to what happened to Talking Giants. There would be instances where the Jets would actually listen to their radio show. Let's Talk Jets Radio. They would listen into the show. Tyson and Kevin or whoever would come on the field. Jets organization member. I don't know who the name is, but I know it's happened. Pulls them aside, said, that show was a little rough yesterday. Might want to tone that down. And that is exactly what the Giants are doing to Bobby Skinner and Justin Penick for Talking Giants. I didn't bring this up because it was Jets. I brought it up because let's not be stupid. The Giants and Jets are all over right now, are focused more on optics, social media, tickets, merchandise, popularity, and all of that, prioritizing that over winning. That's why I'm going to say it right now. I'm going to call out names because I'm not associated with these people. I'm not a fan of these people. I'm not a Giants fan at all. Patricia Traina, Paul Schwartz, Art Stapleton, all going to bat for the organization. Art Stapleton claiming he was personally attacked by fans, which is bullshit. Even though you have Art Stapleton openly celebrating the win. against the Colts, which set back the Giants. And trust me, I'll have a quick story about that in a sec. You have Patricia Traina talking multiple options, saying, what's the strategy for the Giants since they, screwed off the number 1 overall pick. Basically kind of a wrong timing thing. Paul Schwartz writing articles why Joe Schoen should stay. Once you identify a team's beat, you know who the Muppets are for the organization. Yes. Brian Costello's that for the Jets organization. As I said, Traina, Art Stapleton. And again, I'm not even a fan of this team. I'm just saying what I see. And they're all fanning, and Art Stapleton, I don't remember what he said, but he was trying to explain himself in terms of how his writing goes. A lot of people describe him by the book. He's like, certain things I'm afraid to get criticized by the, I think he said something along those lines, by the organization for. Reporters are in danger of getting fired if they say something too negative. That was a light bulb for me. Like, yeah, you're definitely being paid lots of money and a bonus by the organization. But to move off of that, you obviously have that. And I just want to say one more thing before I let you guys go, because it's been a little lengthy. I said last week with Miz and Adam and Rob Zero B and Brian on, we were in a similar situation 4 years ago, like you guys. It was week 15. The Jets just beat the Rams to lose the number 1 overall pick. And they could have had Trevor Lawrence. Now, Trevor Lawrence hasn't worked out. But I still think there's a lot of dysfunction that stems from that day. And it's not just about, and this is something John Mara has to realize too. It's not just about the quarterback. Trade back options if possible, if you don't want a quarterback this year. You know what's more important? The head coach, if you were going to fire Brian Daboll. And John Mara has to realize, and it took Steve Tisch to realize this to tell Mara when the whole Joe Judge thing happened. Because what originally happened was Gettleman was going to retire. Joe Judge was going to pick his GM. You're forcing an arranged marriage. And an arranged marriage, if Brian Daboll's fired and Joe Schoen stays, will happen again. So John Mara will, in my opinion, most likely not have learned his lesson. Wipe the slate clean. At the end of the day, you're not getting a top candidate. There's not a lot of top candidates out there, a lot of coordinators. But if you want your best candidate, clean slate. I want to work with a new general manager.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because it's not an attractive situation.
No.
Not at all. So say that he retains both of them. Look who he hired as a defensive coordinator last year. Our 4th option. He was basically our 4th option. Right? And he's a one and done. He's not coming back. There's no chance that he's coming back.
I would tend to disagree with that.
You think they're going to bring him back?
I'll explain my thoughts.
But I mean, listen, I wouldn't be surprised, because who's going to want to jump in this situation as a lame duck defensive coordinator? Exactly. Who's going to want to be a lame duck offensive coordinator? You see the way that Daboll treats his offensive coordinator, the way he treats Mike Kafka?
What they're gonna do, and I was eventually gonna get into this, so thank you, Donald. But they're gonna keep Mike Gobriel, the special teams coordinator. Kafka's gonna leave. Like there is no, like, you're getting a rookie quarterback on the assumptive, or you're getting a quarterback of some sort that's new. Mike Kafka is not going to stick around for that. And Daboll wants to put the narrative out there that he's not bad-tempered and that he's going to give up the play calling. So he's probably going to try to get some either experienced guy or some young up-and-comer, or they're going to promote from in-house and say, okay, Shea Tierney, you're now the coordinator. You did fine at the Senior Bowl. Now, where I would actually agree with you on these type of things, where I'd say, Shane Bowen's definitely a goner. The problem is that there's not many options out there. And again, it's about, in this case, perception, right? It's not just Shane Bowen was the 4th hire. It's not just, Shane Bowen, if he gets fired, who the fuck wants to come here? It's also about the perception will be the defense wasn't the worst part of the team. But let's be completely honest with ourselves. And I do want to get to a couple of comments, and I want to break this down. I would argue the defense, you could say, the defense was talented. I thought they had the most underperformers, if you think about it. I'll list those after I get to these comments. No, it's not easier that they have the third pick. I didn't say it. I don't know who said it, but it's definitely not easy.
Well, no,
Because
none of us agree.
GM doesn't know what he's doing. He could trade out of position, get a lot of players, not an average quarterback, but just don't end up with a third pick. That's how you get mediocrity, right? Remember when we didn't trade Slayton and Aziz at the deadline? Yes. Did either of them do anything in the second half? No. So that's one of my poignant things is like, whether you end up at 3, you end up at 2, you end up at this, you end up at that, for whatever, like Joe Schoen has failed consistently. And people will say, oh, he traded Leonard Williams and he traded Tony. He's failed consistently on getting value for players, and then we end up in the market and we don't do anything. And I'm pretty sure there's other comments streaming it, I think. And by the way, guys, if you haven't already, please follow Donald and sub up to Pinstripe Chronicles. He debuted his Yankified podcast yesterday. I should have promoted that earlier in the show. But I think Tennessee goes forward with possibly a swing trade with the Giants. Cleveland ain't going quarterback with the Watson situation. The mandate for the idiots coming back is them getting a QB, so we'll see. Like, there's so many wrong avenues. Giants are a fucking mess with the Miz printed on Mara. What's up to No Mets? No, yeah, but if they don't block him, he's gonna go somewhere because he had some pretty significant interest with Seattle last year.
And he was going to leave, but they had to keep him purely out of optics because of all the very strong rumors, if not the facts, that the way that Daboll was treating his assistants and all of them wanted to leave. So they had to try and find a way of keeping Kafka, even though he was basically just a figurehead because he didn't really have any role as an OC because he doesn't call the plays. They gave him some imaginary title. That's the situation that we're in. That's what the situation that we're in. It's a mess.
Yeah.
But Luca is 100% right. There is a lot of optics. It's all about optics. That's a priority. And yeah, listen, this is who John Mara is. John Mara doesn't learn from his mistakes. He just continues to keep making the same ones over and over again. It's just a repetitive cycle with him.
Yeah.
So when you brought up the Tom Coughlin situation, Jerry Reese, after they got rid of Tom Coughlin, Jerry Reese was a desperate general manager spending desperate dollars. And how did it work out? Within 2 years, it blew up in his face because you have a desperate general manager who's now going to have to overspend in free agency to cover for his poor drafts. And then he's going to bring in a lame duck head coach. And over, we start again, right? So that blew up within 2 years. Then we start again. Next time, it's Gettleman and Shermer. And then how did that work out? Once again, Shermer was let go. Gettleman, lame duck general manager who's having to overpay in free agency in order to make up for his poor drafts. And over we go. And by the way, his drafting is so much better than Joe Schoen.
Joe Schoen's, yeah.
But he was a very bad general manager. Desperate GM, once again, spending desperate dollars. What happened? Oh, and also hiring a lame duck head coach. What happened? Within a 2-year cycle, it's blown up again. And over we go. And now we head into this situation. And we're almost in exactly the same situation. I mean, if he keeps Joe Schoen and fires Brian Daboll, say that's what happens, it's going to be exactly the same as the situation we had with Jerry Reese and the situation we had with Dave Gettleman, where once again, it's a desperate GM who's going to hire a lame duck head coach and is going to spend desperate money to make up for his poor drafts. Where have we heard that before? Oh, only every single 2-year cycle of the last decade. Do you know how hard it is to be this bad in the NFL?
You actually have to try.
It takes a concerted effort because the NFL rewards tankers, right? It rewards tankers, and it's a situation where there's so much parity in the NFL that as long as you hire the right people and draft the right quarterback, you're gonna be going to the playoffs within 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's right across the board. Look at it. The Texans were a moribund franchise with a terrible general manager who completely blew up the franchise. They tanked the right way, got CJ Stroud. What happened? They were awesome last year. They're making the playoffs this year.
But
what happened with the Bengals? Bengals, worst organization I can remember through my growing up. Constantly losing every single year. They tanked the right year, got Joe Burrow. The rest is history. And the Chiefs basically sat everybody so they didn't have to have Joe Burrow make the playoffs this year because he would have crushed it, I guarantee. So you go right, and then the best example is the Commanders. The Commandos who have no organization, they don't have a title. They were a complete loss. They were a complete mess, right? They were the Washington football team for a while, right? They did the draft. They tanked the right way last year, and what happened? They get Jaden Daniels. They're in the playoffs, and next week they are gonna have their first year in the playoffs in a while. That is what you're talking about. It is very easy to make the playoffs if you make the right decisions. But the Giants have been making every single wrong decision possible since 2012. It has been every single year, every single new mistake, every single year. And they even managed to blow having the greatest quarterback in their history, which they did. And they managed to blow that as well after he won them 2 championships.
Yep.
Didn't give him any protection, and allowed the completely incompetent Jerry Reese and that awful moron Ross, whatever his name was.
Mark Ross.
Mark Ross, complete moron, and basically looked like behind the scenes they were trying to F Eli. And that's what they were doing. And John Mara just sat back and let it happen. So they've blown that. And now it's just been a constant disaster since then. I mean, we are this whole Giants pride thing, this player isn't a Giants player, that player isn't good enough for the Giants, that general manager isn't good enough for the Giants. That doesn't exist anymore. No. We are what we are, which is one of the worst organizations in football.
In sports.
That's what we are now. In sports. But we are very much, I think, statistically the worst team in football over this stretch. We are a disgrace. We are a complete disgrace.
Yeah.
And we are protected because we're in the New York metropolitan area and we have a bunch of Super Bowls to our name yesteryear. Right? And that's what we're holding on to. But lately, they have very little going for them right now. They really do, because what little talent that we had in the building last year, Joe Schoen let walk, and McKinney and Barkley walk away. Right?
Walk away.
Now we've not even got a handful worth of talented players. Not even a handful. 2 or 3 at the most. The Jets have a ton more talent than the Giants do.
I would agree with that.
They do. They have much more talent on defense and a much more talent on offense. So I'm sorry. As a Giant fan, it's very hard to be optimistic. If they bring back this situation, it's a disgrace. But if they do one or the other, it's a disgrace. The only thing that they can possibly do in order for us to have any hope is, once again, fire everybody, clean slate.
Please.
But they won't do it because they're morons.
And before I get to Luca, I also must add our YouTube chat is kind of blowing up right now. So anyone who's new here, please hit the like button, subscribe to all the good stuff. Check out Nick's Cast, check out Pinstripe Chronicles. What I was adding to your point, Donald, is the Giants don't tank, right? The Giants don't tank. It's beneath them to tank. Teams tank, but the Giants don't. Hopefully, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, It's apparently also beneath. Is that lower than benching your franchise quarterback for Geno fucking Smith?
Well, then
Right.
it was okay. Then it was fine. It's fine to bench him for Geno Smith. What's up to Johnny?
That was John Mara's plan, by the way.
Yeah,
He approved it.
yeah, and then he got the backlash and was like, okay,
He got the backlash, and then he was like, "Oh shit, better throw someone else in front of the Wolves."
Yes. What's Johnny Abba says, hope Vrabel gets a job and takes Bone with him. I would love that. Good evening, boys. First time here. Greetings from Brazil. Hoping New Days, New York. Let's go. What's up, man? No Mets, no Nets, no Jets. What's up, man? Johnny the Beagle Dad is also in the chat. Who else would DC with Daboll? A first time like linebacker coach, D-line coach,
DB's coach.
DB coach, some sort of a coordinator on that front. Get any QB you want, Peyton Manning, but you got to build a real deal O-line. I will say this. I don't think the O-line was a disaster this year. I thought our coach was really good at the position.
Yeah, I think
but you do need to build like sustainability. Like this O-line is not going to last you 10 years. Like you need Thomas. Okay, that's fine. Schmitz is not good for his value. Not like he's not a bust, but he's not good. He's not a second round worth. Runyon's only got 2 years left. Van Roten's a free agent, and Illinois got a 1 year left. So they need to, reevaluate. Keep in mind,
to rebuild the offensive line very, very soon.
Yeah, listen, that's what they did, right? They went out in free agency because Azudu sucked, Neal sucked, McKeithen sucked.
Yep.
Schmitz is decent, but like that's not even like
he's
where
not even. I don't even think he's good. I think he's bad. Bad center.
Keep in mind we were hot and heavy. Ken Dorsey is available for OC. Here's a problem. I believe he got a job because of Josh Allen. Like, I don't think he was. And I know he had a terrible situation with quarterbacks, but Gronk said Josh McDaniels OC with New England if Vrabel gets done. Interesting.
That
Rob
doesn't surprise me.
Sean Mara. I have to send the link out to Rob. I want to get his thoughts. This one, I mean, this is an interesting comment, but the story is very interesting. If anyone hasn't read up on that,
Johnny Taylor.
He's going to trade up for an overhyped quarterback without an O-line. Listen, man, you're desperate and you're desperate, right? You're desperate to either get a quarterback, so you don't want to trade up to give up the assets, and you end up taking like fucking Jackson Dart, and then you surround him with pieces, or maybe it's just not good enough, and the quarterback sucks, like a Daniel Jones thing all over again. Or you trade up for Shedeur Sanders, and you don't have the pieces. It's a lose-lose situation, but that's what happens when you fucking suck at your job. You're wasting Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence's prime and neighbors with contract. A rookie QB is a rebuilding year, and the organization spends like they're a step away from a Super Bowl. Absolutely. That's a poignant comment, Rybrad. Just look at the common denominators, the problem of the family members and close friends that can't get fired. I will say this, though, before I go on with the comments and obviously a couple other different things. There is a story. Now, I'm not the one who broke this story, but if you guys know Sal, I don't know his like specific like Twitter at, but his name is Sal, who's not a content creator on Twitter.
Yeah,
Him and this guy Monty had a show last week where they talked about the Giants organization.
Donald, you're gonna love some of this that Alex is gonna say.
Now, the one story that I poignantly remember is during the processes of which Brian Flores and Brian Daboll were the two candidates, you had Joe Schoen had his eyes set on Brian Daboll. That's fine, right? Obviously it worked out the way it did. But during that process, you had John Mara and Tim McDonald texting Brian Flores about how much they want him for the job. That's why the lawsuit is there. I don't think it has anything. Maybe they have race added into it, but it's not predicated on race. It's about hiring processes in the NFL. And Steve Wilkes and Ray Horton have also joined that. But that's a true story, by the way.
So actually, John Mara preferred Flores.
Correct.
Interesting. Because I actually preferred Flores, too.
At the time, I preferred Daboll. But even, obviously, what's now is now.
The point is your owner meddled.
I wouldn't, have the owner one thing. The nephew of the owner should not be texting the candidate about how much he wants him for the job.
Right.
You may be involved in that process, but let your GM evaluate.
And the whole Bill Belichick thing where he text the wrong Brian or whatever. Was that a deliberate from Belichick in order to shed light with
I think it
on
was.
Flores on the Giants organization?
I want to say I can't say for certain, but I think it was. I think it was.
Because he's not a dumb man.
No, he
He is one of the smartest people,
yeah.
and he. One thing is for sure, he actually cares about the Giants, but he does not like John Mara. He doesn't like the way the Giants run their organization right now. So even if Bill Belichick was available, I actually don't think he would take the job because even though he does care about the Giants organization, the history and stuff like that, he has connections to it. He really doesn't like the way the Giants run the situation right now. I've heard that from Jordan Rannon. He said he is not happy with the way things are being run by the Giants. But I mean, I'm not surprised. I do think it was a shady process, but I think it's part and parcel with the way that the Giants run the show right now. They are lost. They don't know what they want to do. They don't.
Alex, what
The
are the
GM that has one plan. You have the owner with another, and it's been going on the whole way through. And that's why I'm shocked that John Mara is so like doubled down on Joe Schoen. Joe Schoen is basically been doing shit on his own volition. For instance, the Saquon shit. John Mara said, "I will have a very hard time sleeping if Saquon Barkley goes to the Eagles." And what did Joe Schoen say? Oh, I got a text saying that the Eagles are out on Saquon Barkley. How did that work out for you? You complete and total moron, right? But it was Joe Schoen's ego that was pushing this whole let's get Saquon out. We're not even going to just discuss anything. We'll get him out because his pride. And John Mara wanted to keep Saquon. So once again, you're running on two different things. And if that is the case, that he wanted Flores, and obviously Shane wanted Daboll, that's once again, they're running on different paths. You want an organization that's singing from the same hymn sheet, and I don't think it does. I really don't think it does.
Alex, please tell Donald about the whole Daniel Jones negotiations and what he did.
Oh, that's going to be one. But I wanted to prove Donald's point a little bit more earlier, get to the comments, and then I have another juicy one.
I was also gonna maybe offer my thoughts real quick.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say I want to thwart a couple theories. Number one, the theory that teams don't tank, and I said this in the pre-show, is ridiculous. You look, and not anybody saying this, not in the chat or not you guys. The idea that teams don't tank is ridiculous. Players don't tank, that's true, but management and coaches make decisions to try to get a higher draft pick. You look at the Titans, you look at the Browns. Just want to thwart that theory. Number two, I could also say, and this has been said for the past couple of months, 2022 was the worst thing to happen to the Giants. Just like 2016 was the worst thing to happen to the Giants. Gives them false hope. They can't build on the next year. Number three, I got to ask you all an honest question, all you Giant fans. How are you selling tickets next year? Who's going to the games? Seriously, who's going to the games next year?
Cousins is your quarterback next year. Good luck on selling people.
So much for merchandise and optics and social media. Who's going to the games next year? Who's hyped to go to Giants? Who's hyped to go see Giants football next year? And you got a ridiculously hard schedule next year.
Yeah. Let's see.
I want to know this DJ contract story. God knows, but okay. I know that it's going to piss me off.
It is. No, I know it will. So to add to Donald's context about these teams with these plans and stuff like that, you mentioned the Texans, right? Jacob also mentioned that they traded up for Will Anderson. So they didn't have, I don't know how many assets they have, but they still traded up, and they still were 2023 good, right? So you had the 49ers, who 2014 was the last year of Jim Harbaugh. 2015, They go 5-11 with Jim Tomsula. They fire his ass because he's soft. 3-13 with Chip Kelly in 2016. 2017, they hire Kyle Shanahan, go 6-10 with Jimmy G. First, CJ Beathard. Then Jimmy G gets injured. You have Nick Mullins, and they go with 4 wins. The third year, they go to the Super Bowl with Jimmy G, right? So we could cross that team off. We talked about the Texans. How about the Detroit Lions, where they had a shitty situation?
Right.
Bob Quinn, Matt Patricia. First year's 3 wins. The second year, they kick the Packers out of the playoffs. They just miss it by a little bit. They go 9-8, and The third year, guess what? They are in the NFC Chip, and now they look like the best team in football.
Oh yeah, easy.
So here's the story that they also brought up in that show is when Daniel Jones was at the facility on the last few days
This is the
of the
negotiation,
negotiation of the contract, he got word from his agents that Joe Schoen was still kind of like off the page. Like he was not kind of like in the direction that they
He
wanted.
wasn't fully
to go.
on board.
Wasn't fully on board with the numbers. So Daniel Jones texts John Mara and says, "It's been a pleasure playing for your organization." John Mara steps in, and that contract gets done. I'm thinking to myself, you fucking sly bastard. He knew what buttons to push.
Daniel Jones is a sly bastard.
I mean, why do you think he played safety in practice? He knows the Giants gonna look bad.
Daniel Jones is a brilliant businessman. Horrible footballer. One of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen in my
His
life.
major in college, I believe, is economics.
But he is a smart businessman because he really pulled the wool over a lot of this fan base's eyes, because you guys have got to answer for some shit as well, this fan base. Because you guys,
I had to answer some shit at the beginning. Right.
So much smoke up Daniel Jones' ass. It is not to be believed. He was never good.
No, he wasn't.
Mediocre to bad quarterbacks can have great games. Just look at Drew Lock last week.
Unbelievable.
So I'm sorry. Like, he is a good businessman, man. He knew that John Mara was in his pocket. He knew it.
What can I say?
And it's obscene.
Alex, were there any other personnel?
John Mara's a disgrace, and that might be partly why he's considering bringing Joe Schoen back, because it was him that was behind the Daniel Jones contract. Because anyone that even has any knowledge about football would say that was a bad contract. And that goes out to the content creators of the Giants that said it was a great contract.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to name names, but you guys know who you are. And you're going to have to lie in that bed, because it was never a good contract. And I don't think Joe Schoen, in his right mind, thought it was a great deal. Because what did he actually say? Listen to his word choice. He said his agent sold him on the deal.
He bid against himself.
Right. But he did use the term, Daniel Jones' agent sold him on the deal, which means that he wasn't all the way sold on the whole situation in the first place, so he needed to be sold on it.
I want to know what he got sold on.
Well, the 2-year opt-out, that you could get out of it. But you're going to have to significantly overpay for that 2 years, especially the second year. Highest cap hit in the NFL in year 2.
Alex, was there any other notes from that podcast that you want to tell Donald and our fans?
If I think of it, I will let you know. But before we do a couple other different things, what about Henderson or the D-line guy? Patterson's like 60-something. He's not going to be a defensive coordinator. And Henderson maybe, but like, you're not really exciting anybody with any DC hires. That's a problem. Like, me and Donald have always agreed on the opinion of the Wink Martindale departure. Each team you mentioned improved after tank season were able to get better after getting a real good quarterback from either drafts or trades. Texans Stroud, Bengals Burrow, Washington Jaden. I mean, hell, the fucking Commanders, as Donald brought up, they have a prime example, right? They didn't have depth, though, which was a problem. We gave Dex Zero help in the interior as well. I did bring up, by the way, what's up to Coach Ed? Hope you're doing well, brother, through all of what you've been going through, and Happy New Year. But I did talk about the defense having a lot of underachievers. Bring Flores in. I don't think he's going to come back. I personally wouldn't want him because I know his offensive side of the ball isn't a huge success.
But his defense is excellent.
His defense is pretty damn good. And it's aggressive, too. You mentioned how talented the Jets players. Then how did the Jets only win 5 games with Rodgers playing? Well, I mean, the talent underachieving, and I'll let Luca answer that if you want. But
Well,
they are still. It's still like you look at on paper, they are more talented what the Giants brought in.
that's true. The NFL, first of all, I'll say real quick before you go further, the NFL is a coaching league, and the Jets have arguably the worst coaching staff in all of the NFL. Rodgers got hurt through the year. I'm not using this as an excuse. He did not play well. Sauce underachieved. Brees Hall underachieved. Garrett Wilson wasn't getting the ball. The offense was bad. The defense took a major downfall after Robert Saleh was fired, which he should have been fired in January. But it was just a lot of things, and pretty much the owner fucked it up as well. So it wasn't just it wasn't just the roster. The roster was flawed because Joe Douglas took assets away from the defensive line, but it was a multitude of things. You can't say one specific thing.
Absolutely. But talent-wise, if you compare the talent-wise on both rosters, I don't think it compares. You got Aaron Rodgers, who's much better than all 3 of the Giant quarterbacks combined. In fact, all 4. Right? You got Hall, who's underachieved, but he's very talented.
Braylon Allen.
Wilson. We've got Allen. You've got
Can I say I'm sorry, Donald, can I say something? Remember, you guys signed Devin Singletary.
Right, and then you got McDonald, you got Gardner.
Right.
You got a ton of talent, actually. It hasn't come together because of coaching and embarrassing way of handling the coaching staff, and that comes down to once again ownership. And and Lucas has been spot on. He's right in mirroring the situation. I wonder whether John Mara sits down with Woody Johnson, because it's almost like they do exactly the same thing, just in a different way.
Yeah,
but they're both equally incompetent.
Yeah, I was going to say 2 things. I think the organizations parallel each other. A, B, as I was about to say, you guys signed Devin Singletary to be a replacement for Saquon Barkley. Devin Singletary, who's always been a number 2 running back.
Laughable.
Absolutely abhorrent and just a
And Alex, how about Jalen Hyatt? 8 catches all year
for 62 yards for a guy they traded up for.
That can be done in a game setting.
Yeah,
right.
Malik Neighbors and Darius Slayton have busted that. They traded up for that guy. They traded up for 2 busts in that draft: Jalen Hyatt and Deonte Banks. Which I know people have come at me and said, "Well, you got to give Banks a chance." I'm like, dude, this is his second defensive core. First of all, it's a win-win. It's a lose-lose situation either way, because if Shane Bowen comes back, Banks is going to suck like he did this year. And 2, if you get a new defensive coordinator, that's 3 systems in 3 years for him.
Right.
So you're
again, because Joe Schoen is so confused, he drafted Banks on Wink Martindale's recommendation because Wink Martindale wanted a pressed man corner.
Yep.
So that's why they went Banks over Joey Porter and other options. Because of that. Why did Joe Schoen trade up for Jalen Hyatt? Because of Brian Daboll. Daboll wanted him. So they're a confused organization. They make bad decisions on a whim.
That's completely true right there. As I said, folks, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to all the good stuff. Check out Nick's Cast, Pinstripe Chronicles. Check out their Twitters also as well. We're, I think, about 17 away from 2,200, so make sure to share to your friends and do all the good stuff. G-Man Hurt says 4-13 next season. With the home schedule and the total schedule we have, 4 wins is generous. I think maybe we could check that out. And by the way, I will always say that I did stick on the Joey Porter trade, so that's my little win right there. Luca.
Can I say Dan Duggan had a tweet about an hour ago. He said, if the Giants bring back Daboll, the reason has to be because they believe that he has what it takes to lead them to a Super Bowl. Not that they're worried they can't do better than a coach who has gone 9-25 the past 2 years.
The Super Bowl.
Rob, how are you handling this?
What's up, guys? Happy New Year. I'm sorry for cursing. I'm glad it's over, man. Fine. I'm very happy this season's over. This was the worst season I've ever watched in my entire life. They stunk, flat out stunk. They probably didn't deserve to win any games. They completely botched the quarterback position. They had the out for year 2 of Daniel Jones, and they cut him before that, even though they used him as the scapegoat for this whole problem. I despise John Mara. I know Joe Schoen has a lot of blame going his way, and deservedly so, but he can't be the sole focus of all the blame. It's the owner that keeps hiring these idiots and keeps making the same decisions over and over. I mean, you've got how many instances where we've fired the coach and kept the GM? Donald brought it up earlier. The thing with Jerry Reese, it did it with Gettleman. And they might do it again, or they might keep both of them. I think you can't keep one and get rid of the other. You gotta have to either keep both or just start fresh. I hope they start fresh, but I got this feeling that now that we're probably not going to get a quarterback in this draft, they'll keep both. And I'm afraid of that because they might use next year's schedule as a reasoning, because if you draft a quarterback, you're probably going to fire them next year anyway when they inevitably win 3 games again. And they're not winning more than 5 games. I mean, 5 might be the maximum. That's wishful thinking. It's bad, man. Like I tried to be optimistic with this team, even especially after 2022, because I thought things were finally turning around. But this year was just so nauseating to watch. It made me sick to watch the Giants play football. And I used to get up every Sunday and be like, Giants played today. I'm ready to go. I love my team. And now I'm waiting for the fourth quarter to be over. I can't stand watching them this year. And I hate saying that. They're a terrible football team. They're run like absolute clowns. And John Mara is at the head of it all. Him and his family, his entire family, and his dumb little friend Tish, who only shows up every so often, they all need to go. I wish he would sell the team, but it's rough watching these guys play football. Whether it's injuries, they have like a handful of really, really good players. Like Malik Neighbors just put together probably the greatest season by a Giants receiver ever, with Tim Boyle and Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, Daniel Jones throwing him the football. And I don't even want to be excited about it because he more than likely is going to be gone in a few years. There's no way he's going to want to stay with this team. After his rookie contract, I'd be shocked if he's still a Giant, even 3 years into his rookie deal. I like Tyrone Tracy, but we're not going to build around a running back. There's a handful of guys that are good, but we're in hell, basically. Yeah, the background works. The Giants are in hell. The Giants are in absolute hell, and it's really just it's so bad watching them. I'm sitting here and I'm trying to think of ways. Well, maybe if they do this, if we get Travis Hunter, that'll be fun. But there's just so many other holes on this team, and John Mara is at the center of every issue that has been going on with this team since they won that Super Bowl in 2012. And I just don't see an end in sight. I always try to look for that light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to sports. I don't see it. I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan. I can see it because they are tanking without saying they're tanking. They're losing games, but they got a plan. The Yankees have had a plan, even though it hasn't necessarily worked. The Giants don't have any clue what they're doing. I don't see that light at the end of the tunnel, and I hope that Joe Schoen, if they do give him another shot, what's Joe Schoen going to do? They got a lot of money apparently coming in cap space next year. Are they just going to spend wildly like Jerry Reese did after 2015? Remember he put a very expensive Band-Aid on a bad team and it helped for one season.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that. And it got him fired. But I have a bad feeling that if they keep Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, it's because they're going to fire them after year 4 because they're not going to take a quarterback and they're going to want to start fresh for next year's class, which again, next year's class is not that good either. You're looking at Nussmeier probably being the top guy. I don't know. Do you wait for Arch Manning? Can we really suffer for 2 more terrible years? It's such a shit show. It's a mess, and there's nobody that can come in and fix this. Mike Vrabel ain't fixing this. Ben Johnson's not fixing this. It's going to be a lot more suffering until John Mara gets his head out of his ass.
Yeah. I'm going to go through a few comments, and then I have a very important question. Shane, by the way, literally when Rob was talking, I put in the Google search a picture of hell And then when as Rob said hell, I decided to put it behind me. Shane is a disaster when you have to deal with agents, comes off as a complete douche. Absolutely agree. I get spending when Eli was there. Yeah, I mean, for the win now, but, he couldn't draft, meaning Jerry Reese. He's going to want a bag and won't pay. We won't pay yet again. He's talking about, of course, Malik Neighbors. For this comment, Saquon wasn't coming back, and don't blame it. It was so stupid not to move on from him when we started 1-6. Right, we started off 1-6. We didn't want to trade him to like the Ravens. Instead, he went to the Eagles, and we got nothing. Rumor is Shane wanted to franchise DJ and have Saquon on a multi-year, but he wouldn't sign the multi-year. Commanders fan says, Commanders fan, an absolutely thrilled clown show. Yeah, you guys have it over there. Meanwhile, we're sitting in our own bullshit. If DJ didn't choose Daniel, they could have had Herbert instead of Thomas in 2020. I mean, I like Andrew Thomas, but the fact that keeping Eli an extra year was kind of an extra like thing majigga right there. So my question to you guys is this, and I have a rooting interest for this particular question. Now, for Rob's thing about the cap, besides the Giants having 3 overall, they have the 15th most cap in the NFL at $57 million. That's not a lot. That's a decent amount, but like other teams have more. For example, the Titans have more, and the Patriots have $131 million. They will be picking 4th in the year's draft. Wow. So let me ask this, and I also want to hear Rob's staff predictions, because me and Donald and Luca were talking about that earlier. I'll start with Donald first. What is going to be the selling point to the fan base next year if you don't pick a quarterback in the first round of this draft?
There is nothing. What are you selling? Malik? No, they'll sell Malik Neighbors because of his rookie record. Come watch Malik Neighbors, and in our awful stadium that's ridiculously overpriced. That's about it. Because I mean, listen, they'll be better next year regardless. It's impossible not to be better than last year. Because even say they sign Kirk Cousins, he's better than Daniel Jones. So, I mean, it would be a mistake, but he's better than Daniel Jones. So then you're going to get mediocre quarterback play that you might sneak a win or two more than say this year. But I'm not advocating for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that. Such was the moribund state of the Giants quarterback situation last year that anything will be an improvement next year on that. I'm afraid, though, because Joe Schoen has not shown me anything. He hasn't shown me a vision. He hasn't shown me an idea of what he wants in the draft because it's a little bit haphazard. It's a little bit all over the place. There isn't like a consistent theme. He doesn't go all in on rebuilds. He just kind of does a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And in free agency, I don't like the way that he talks to players' agents. I think he comes across as a bit of a douchebag. And he doesn't really sell the Giants on players. So you're not going to get too much on. You're not going to get too many discounts of someone that's going to be blown away going, I really want to play in New York. I really want to play for the Giants, because he doesn't really sell it. Because just look at the way that he mishandled a lot of the top free agents last year and the year before that. He doesn't do a good job in general. He's actually a very bad general manager. He actually is. He's a very, very bad general manager. And we got to see it firsthand. I can't believe that the Giants allowed those cameras in there for an organization that's so protective of their image that they allowed their obnoxious, arrogant, incompetent general manager to be obnoxious, arrogant, and incompetent live on TV. And and the whole world got to see him be all those three things to Saquon Barkley and about Daniel Jones and this, that, and the other, I'm amazed that he's going to have a job by tomorrow, because I mean it's frightening. The league is laughing at the Giants right now. The league never used to laugh at the Giants. They're laughing now. And the symbol of it is actually Saquon Barkley. Whether you guys wanted Saquon Barkley or not, fans in general, he's the image now. Because Joe Schoen was the one that pushed him out the door. Right? Very arrogantly as well. Because he was the one that was smiling. Like, I mean, thought it was hilarious when John Mara was like in complete stress about the loss of Saquon Barkley. And he's like, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. Yeah, we're not fine. We are not fine.
You're not.
We are so far from fine. So, I mean, honestly, I'm amazed that he actually survived that meeting. Because he was basically being obnoxious to his owner. If any owner had any kind of anything about him, would be like, this whole decision is on your head. If this blows up in your face and he does go to the Eagles, you're being fired. You better make sure he doesn't go to the Eagles. But because John Mara is completely incompetent, doesn't know what he wants or anything, he allowed this whole thing to happen, the whole thing to blow up in his face. Now you got fans that are sending airplanes out there above MetLife saying, fire everybody. And the Giants are more upset about the fact that they flew planes than the fact that people are laughing at the Giants and the fans are angry. They were more worried, they were more angry at the optics of that than they were why they're in that situation in the first place. Right? And that's what has been the biggest problem in the New York Giants, because look at rightly pointed out that the Giants are all obsessed with optics. And this has been going on for as long as I can remember. So let's go back to when Mike Francesa did Mike Don, right? He had the scheduled interviews with Giant head coaches on a weekly basis, right? He had Ben McAdoodle, right? And he chewed Ben McAdoodle out for the whole Eli Manning stuff, for the disgraceful way he treated Eli Manning. He chewed him out, right? Ben McAdoodle got protected by Pat Hanlon, right? Didn't let him go near Mike Francesa after that, right? Pat Shurmur got eaten alive by Mike Francesa for another horrible year. And Pat Hanlon banned Mike Francesa from talking to any Giant. And no Giants were on his channel. Right? And that goes to show how the Pat Hanlon and the New York Giants protect their image. They can't have themselves being embarrassed live on air. You know, they can't have their head coach sounding like morons live on air. So they protect them, wrap them up in a little bubble, and so it actually kind of goes along with the way that they treated Bobby Skinner on Talking Giants when he had that video that says this is why Joe Schoen needs to be fired. It's a very professional video. It was a very good video. There was nothing other than professional. And Pat Hanlon gives him a call at 8:30 at night on a Sunday. You know, what's the issue? No, not your terrible general manager. Not that the fact that fans are angry, maybe you should listen to why they're angry. No. The biggest problem is the optics. The optics. And that's what the Giants are obsessed with. They're obsessed with optics. And so you've got the shills that come out, and you know that there's a John Mara narrative that needs to come out when the shills come out, and it's particularly Art Stapleton. Sorry, Art, you know, you big crybaby, but that's the truth. He is a shill, and if whatever he says is normally something that John Mara is giving him a nudge towards saying, especially Schwartz and Patricia Traynor as well. Again, as Lucas pointed out, that is what it is. It's all about optics. It's not about why they're in this situation. It's not about examining why they're in this situation. It's we can't have people saying bad things about the Giants, right? And that's the way it's been. It's been like this for a long time, and it's a very big problem. And I know that John Mara was more angry at the fact that anybody flew planes rather than the message it sent. So that's the problem that we're in, man. We're in a big problem, and John Mara is front and center of this whole problem. And I despise Joe Shane, absolutely despise him, but he is not the reason why the Giants are in this position. John Mara is the reason why we're in this position. He is overseeing this whole thing, and it's a mess, and it's all because of him.
Real quickly, as I almost make my way around the table. No, Bobby didn't budge rye bread. He told the Giants basically, you don't need to help us with anything anymore because you didn't help us in the beginning. Jets mess. I don't know when we're gonna do a mock draft. I'll probably do it in the later months because we're going down to Bama. I think we're gonna get the scoop on some of these guys. I will say this: if they bring in Kirk Cousins next year, and they don't bring in a quarterback of any kind, right? Maybe if they okay, even if they get like a second round, like a Jackson Dart or a Quinn Ewers, I'm gonna root for the Giants to lose the entire year. I don't give a fuck. You try to sell me on a bridge quarterback and say, oh well, this is our guy and this is the starting quarterback and this is what we're gonna sell you guys. Fuck you. I'm gonna go out there and root for you guys to lose because you shouldn't even have a job in the first place. Art is in the bag. This coach is. This is a shit ton of talking about a simple thing: bad leadership, bad ownership, bad GM, and a coach that might be okay elsewhere, but not with this team. I could agree with that. They can't handle any sort of criticism. They are running a daycare over there.
Yes, they can't handle criticism.
This team doesn't have a plan. If they were going to keep Saquon, they should have traded. If they weren't going to keep Saquon, they should have traded him to keep him, win those games. Then just let him walk. Madden level GMing. Madden GMs are a lot better than Joe Shane. New York football is a joke. I agree with Donald. After Hard Knocks, I lost faith in Joe Shane.
Brandon is better than him. I agree.
Nick Cage and Dave's on the right. Go Big Blue. We must get Cam Ward. I've been compared to Ray Romano and Justin Long. Nicholas Cage is a new one, I must say.
Does that make me Daboll?
Yeah.
Because which one of us is Daboll?
I would tend to
which
think
one
like
of us
he's
is Nicolas
thinking
Cage?
it's Rob. I mean,
which one's Nick Cage?
That's a good question. I mean,
I think that's supposed to be you.
Yeah.
You know what? There was a girl I picked up in a club 10 years ago that says I looked like Nick Cage, and I didn't believe her.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He does say Nick Cage and Dave's on the right and Twins on the left. Okay, all right. So I understand the...
I thought it was an insult, but maybe it was...
No, I think he was going for the compliment.
I think it's an insult. That guy's a maniac. That guy is a complete maniac.
At least you didn't get called Daboll. I mean, I would have rather have been called Nick Cage than the head coach of a 3-win football team.
My brother-in-law and many of his friends who are Jet fans still tell me to be grateful as a Giants fan whenever I complain because the Jets haven't won any Super Bowls in their lifetime. That is pretty much Luca's story. But I'll go to Luca, then I'll go to Rob. Luca, what do you have to say?
Well, first of all, the Jets haven't made the playoffs in 14 years. I haven't seen playoff football since I was 7 years old as a Jet fan. Anyways.
Oh, my God.
What about this plan? What if Joe Shane sells his soul on J.J. McCarthy? Vikings make a deep playoff run. He says, you know what? We'll give up some assets for a quarterback I once could have taken.
That shows you're stupid because you could have taken him at 6 and you didn't want him.
Hey, listen, it's just a suggestion. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not Joe Shane.
Right, because this entire panel is probably smarter than Joe Shane. But Luca, what would you sell the fan base on?
My plan right there: go get J.J. McCarthy, hot young new quarterback.
Well, unfortunately, I can't say that I'm happy at that, but at the same time, I'm not going to be happy with any of these suggestions because they're all shit because we have to come up with something because the Giants are so bad. So it's not on us; it's on the Giants.
Right.
But Rob, before I get to how you're going to sell this fan base on a season next year, the 3 coordinators, special teams, offense, and defense, who do you think stays and who do you think goes?
I'd like to think they would have a whole new staff, but something tells me they're gonna. Do they even have an offensive coordinator? Or that's just
Yeah, I mean,
Daboll,
they got
right?
Kafka, who's sort of in there. He's just a
Figurehead.
fucking guy.
Yeah.
I feel like Kafka is just like a
Yeah.
phantom at this point because I don't think we've seen him.
either.
So
Do you ever see him on the sidelines?
I would. No, like he never, even when he was the coordinator, he always sat up
Yeah.
in the
Booth
boot,
area,
like
yeah.
whatever it's called. Yeah, so I mean, I would assume they get a whole new staff because Bowen was terrible, and I mean the fact that Deontay Banks to me is a perfect example. He was solid in his rookie year, and Deontay Banks was either hurt or getting benched constantly this season. And I never thought I would see that because I was like, this guy looks like a legitimate future
Yeah.
number one corner. Finally, we might have one. And in year two, now I question if he's even like the fourth guy on the depth chart because Drew Phillips has taken him over. Drew Phillips was amazing this year. I love that pick. And I would say Cordell Flott was better than him this year. And I never thought I would say that. So like and who else we have at corner? Adoree Jackson was okay, but to me, that's a big example. The fact that nobody really took a step forward in this. I mean, Micah McFadden was okay, but Kayvon Thibodeau was basically a ghost. He didn't do anything. He got worse in year three. I didn't see anybody taking a significant jump forward that was here from the previous coordinator. So you have to look at that and say maybe the coordinator just isn't the right fit for our players. But then if you do that, if you keep him, you got to get a whole new group of players that are going to fit his system, and that's just a mess. That's a disaster waiting to happen. Once again, the Giants can't stop the run, so I think they got to get rid of Bowen. And if Daboll is here, maybe I guess just hire some random Buffalo member like they always do and just keep Daboll calling the play. I would like to think they have a whole new staff in there, but this is also the Giants. It wouldn't surprise me if they somehow convince that dodo head of an owner that they need to keep this around for another year and give them a chance with the quarterback because that's what I can see them doing.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be a promotion. It would be an underlateral move is if they try to talk to Leslie Frazier and get him here. But other than that, you're like, there's no really attractive defensive coordinator out there that like, oh, he just got fired or this. Like that was last year. Like you had Ryan Nielsen, who was one guy, and then Vic Fangio was another, and there was maybe one other guy. But again, like me and Donald talked about when it actually happened.
Denard Wilson.
Denard Wilson, yeah, he's actually Wilson's defense. Now his run defense was like 21st, his points defense was like 30th, but his pass defense was second and his total defense was second.
Wow.
So, and that's with less talent. What's up to Raziel? What's up? Putting reputation on a quarterback coming off a major knee injury would be very on brand with Joe Schoen. I mean, you're dumbing down on the whole quarterback thing because that's what they did with Daniel Jones. So I don't. It's a scary position.
Remember when Joe Schoen said it'd be very hard to screw up 2 top 10 picks? Well, he did,
and he did,
and he's coming back more likely.
He's coming back. And what I was talking about, like, we know the offense obviously wasn't great, and like the talent there is like marginal because you had Daniel Jones, you had less talent at the running back position, you had O-line, whatever. As I was saying, and Rob brought it up again, with this defense, people say, "Oh, it's not the problem with the team." Well, let's see. Let's talk about the guys who underachieved. Bobby Okereke wasn't good. Banks wasn't good. I think they should try to trade Thibodeau to get a pick or two. Him and Okereke, like not in the same trade, but like if you could get something, go get it, right? So Okereke, Banks, Belton stunk today.
Oh,
like he was getting roasted by a practice squad tight end. But you had Okereke, you had Banks, Tibbs. Brian Burns isn't like the problem is that he's perceived as bad because Joe Schoen traded for a great edge rusher when he's only a good edge rusher.
Yes.
He's not in Myles Garrett territory.
No.
Never
was.
No. Not at all. Linebackers,
I was against the trade
yes.
because of that. I was at the time, and Rob could testify to that. I wasn't excited about it because um, I only would have done it if it was the second of our second round picks, not the top one.
Yeah.
When I heard that the compensation was the top second, I was like, we're fucking lost because we had so many holes in the roster. We're overpaying someone who's a good to very good edge rusher, but we're overpaying him to be a superstar where he's not close to that. And we have an entirely empty roster, and we're giving up valuable picks um, to service that trade. I thought it was a mistake.
Yeah. Right. I have hope for Banks with the new trainers. No hope for Kayvon. Trade him. Yeah, he's just a. I don't know what he said a few days ago. I'm gonna pull it up on my Twitter. Kind of like pissed me off. Let's see, because there's a lot
Wait,
of things.
Alex, what did Deontay Banks say about not making a specific tackle?
Yeah, he's like sometimes in the moment I'm like nah, but you know.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember I sent Donald that and he kind of flipped out, which obviously. Kayvon said we definitely have something to prove anytime we're out there, and then somebody commented, "This man has been all talk since the day he was drafted. It's phony."
Yes.
Um, Daboll Steve play calls. I would not want Ken Dorsey as OC. Bowen's run defense was good to prior to the Giants, just like Wink. It's just a lack of talent. Yeah. When can a head coach get hired? It depends on who you want to hire. Like if it's somebody who didn't make the playoffs, you could probably start your interviews now. If you if it's somebody in the playoffs, there's like certain rules. They've changed it a little bit this year, so I'm not totally intact. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind. That'd probably be the next one that they actually go to. Gerard Mayo, but Robert Saleh would be a interesting one for a defensive coordinator. I mean, he wasn't a great leader of men, but his
Doesn't he run a
defense was
4-3?
exceptional.
He runs a 4-3.
He runs a
Yeah.
4-3 though.
That's the problem. Wait, hold on. Okay, never mind. Get Dex some help in the middle. Absolutely agree. Cam goes to Tennessee, should order the Browns, and our dumbest GM will draft Travis. I'm a simp hunter. Yeah, that's an interesting situation with this girl. But on football terms, good luck selling the fan base on a defensive player when our offense is shit. Any chance Shanahan's on a hot seat? He's not great, but I'd take him if he's available. Maybe steal some top personnel from the Ravens, Lions, Ben Johnson. Hot name, but no head coaching experience. I don't think that Shanahan's going to get traded.
Let me ask you guys, right? I want to ask you guys
Sure.
something. No, we're working under the assumption because a lot of very trusted sources are all saying that they believe that they're going to run it back. What would need to happen tomorrow for John Mara to change his mind and fire everybody?
Well, I'll say this to start. I think maybe if Tisch approaches him or gives him a call saying, I'm flying in, we need to talk, like he gives that kind of tone.
Yeah.
Or what if season ticket holders start to cancel?
Right.
My answer to that is Steve Tisch, because I don't know when season ticket holders are due for the payments and stuff like that. To be honest with you, and I'm not trying to like shit on Giant fans here, but I feel like the Jet fans have a better pulse of canceling season tickets than the Giant fans do. I don't know why. I just feel that way. But if you're ever going to get like any sort of change, that's where it's going to come from. And yeah, I gotta let Rob answer that question.
I mean, John Mara would have to become a whole new person if he wants to change his mind, because I think he's already made up his mind. You saw that smile on Daboll's face after the game?
Yep.
That man's coming back. I think that's either the consensus on Twitter about that. That's either a man that knows he's safe or knows that he's finally out of here and he can go join Vrabel's staff, or he's going to join some team with the quarterback like the Patriots with Drake May. He's finally going to get his quarterback that he wanted. So I think he's going to be back. I think they're going to give him another shot, and that means Shane is probably going to be back. Ideally, they would keep Daboll and give the job to Brandon Brown, but that's probably too simple of a thing for John Mara to do, and that pea-sized brain of his. I don't. I think the only way that John Mara changes his mind is that he finally has his finger on the pulse, and he doesn't have anything on the pulse. He's so tone deaf about what's going on here. The fact that, like Donald said, you have planes flying over your stadium and you're not getting the message. You're more mad about the fact there's a plane, but not
Yes.
about what that plane is saying. And they're saying we will not stop. They're actually kind of being cordial. Mr. Mara, please fix this. They are begging you, and you're
Yeah.
like, that's not nice. They shouldn't be flying a plane over our stadium. It's like, read the fucking message, man. These
Read the
fans are
room.
angry. They're sick of this. It's up to you to fix this. You're obviously not selling the team, so fix it. We are begging you. He has to have a complete 180 on his mindset. He has to have a change of heart. He has to probably get replaced by somebody else overnight and just is wearing his I don't know, like some weird shit has to have to happen for John Mara to change his mind, because he has never done these things. The last time he actually made a decision that I agreed with when he hired Daboll and Schoen, because he finally went against his normal bring in a familiar face. But unfortunately, this plan has not worked. I thought it was going to work. It's blown up in his face. It's gotten worse. Rebuilds don't get worse in year 3. They're supposed to get better. It's unfortunate it didn't work out, but you got to move forward. I don't think he's going to move forward. But to answer the original question, what has to happen? John Mara has to have like a dream where the ghost of Giants past come to him and say, you better fire these idiots and get this thing back on track. Like, or maybe Lawrence Taylor himself has to come to his house and just smack him around or something.
Or,
Yeah, I think
or
the reason why that it blew up, because it was a good idea. It was what we all agreed on. We were all very happy about it. I think the reason why it all blew up is because they all don't sing from the same hymn sheet. They really don't. So, as I say, Mara wanted to keep Daniel Jones. Joe Schoen didn't pick up Daniel Jones' fifth option, right? Then obviously Joe Schoen doesn't follow through on a philosophy because he's all over the place, and then obviously extends him. But the original plan, after not picking up his fifth option, was I think he was absolutely planning on bringing in a new quarterback the year after. But we always knew behind the scenes that John Mara wanted to keep Daniel Jones at all costs, and that was part of the hiring process. I do believe that, right? So I think that that's an element. John Mara wanted to keep Saquon Barkley. I don't think that Joe Schoen values running backs, as clear by this past offseason where he signed Devin Singletary. So he doesn't really value running backs to a high level. And it was clear in Hard Knocks that he didn't think that running backs are going to get paid. And he was completely wrong, because then running backs got like record numbers this past offseason. So he was completely wrong. But as I'm saying, it's another example that they're not all singing from the same hymn sheet. And then when Joe Schoen said, "Oh, we're running it back with Daniel Jones. This is Daniel Jones' year." Tim McDonald didn't sound very happy about it, and Brian Daboll didn't look very happy about it. So I really think that that's why it blew up, because I think a lot of people had different plans on how to build this thing, and it's all blown up.
By the way, I like Daniel's profile pic, Ted. Boys, Jesus, Commanders, Jane Daniels, playoffs immediately. Philly Hurts, playoffs immediately. Dallas Dak, playoffs immediately. Just get a competent GM, draft a QB, and then you have it. Well, only if it was that simple, Luca.
I'm going to say that back to Rob's point, the ghosts of Giants past to wake up Mara. Mara's going to have a dream of like his father or some shit like that.
An epiphany. He's going to have a huge epiphany. If he does dare pick up the fifth-year options on both of these idiots, we're going to have a real problem. Neal is a disaster. Hunter can be third down wide receiver sets.
Are you? Never mind.
This one was Steve Tisch. Steve Tisch called and said, "You got to fire him."
That's really? So it was actually Tisch.
Yep.
So Mara wasn't planning on firing.
It was Steve Tisch and Giants Twitter.
So
Yeah, he was
that
kind of bullied into that decision because the original reports I believe were that he wanted to keep Joe Judge and
yeah.
that Gettleman was going to get his chance to walk into the sunset, which wasn't deserved. I know he had a lot of health issues, but the Giants should have got rid of him long before he got to retire. But I think they were going to let Judge pick a GM, which I think was going to be Casario. That was like the top choice because
Would
they
have
had
been
that.
Kevin Abrams,
Right.
who was
Okay. Yeah.
the
I thought
assistant GM at the
it
time.
was the year before. There was a lot of conversation about Casario coming over. So yeah, that would have been a disaster because it just would have been another repeat of what we had the year before. So John Mara got bullied, so maybe we need to bully him some more. But he's mad about
Wow.
flying planes. I don't know what else we can do to bully the guy, but he seems very fragile. So violence is not the answer here, but sometimes bullying
You could fly
works.
2 planes.
Yeah, fly 2 planes at once, with both messages saying "do it or else." I don't know. Bullying might work again.
Start canceling your season tickets, folks.
So our only hope is actually Steve Tisch,
Yeah, yeah. The Hollywood
someone
producer
who has
himself.
really nothing to do with the Giants.
Right.
Yeah. I wonder how much he has at stake, though. So
And that's the problem. Well, isn't it like a 50-50 stake between him and Mara?
I would like to believe it, but I wonder how they split that. It was probably between families like a long time ago.
So, I mean, that's the problem. So you've got one guy who has nothing to do with football whatsoever. He's like a Hollywood producer. And the other guy is very much invested in football but doesn't know anything about football. So that's a terrible combination for ownership.
Non-football people making football decisions. John Mara is just responsible for as anyone for this debacle. Pat Leonard was mentioning a story from the morning. It could just be spun coming from this regime, considering how Shane likes to control the narrative. Who knows? They need to go. John Mara never takes any responsibility. Always someone else's fault. Funniest thing is that we have good names with huge potential to be excellent players, but for some reason it doesn't work out. Especially on defense, Bowen seems lost. I don't know. Yeah, we've had a shit record of developing players. With Mara running the organization, does anyone think it will get better? Epiphany and Steve Tisch. Those are my two things. Nick, he says, "Go Irish." Oops, damn, talking about the Giants. You're good, Nick. Proud of my Irish. Aside from the Knicks, that's who I'm happy about. Let's see a little update here. Signs Singletary and doesn't use him because he was extremely like me. Donald, Rob, and Luca could be like speedier at running back than Singletary was to start the year. Like he was super slow and he was always fumbling. This
Eric
is
Gray.
true, but still, Luca.
Eric Gray, another one.
Yeah, Eric Gray. They both Gray and Singletary look like they're running with rocks. They're They have stones in their shoes. Like,
That they do. Honestly, if they can't or can get Sanders trade out of the third pick, or should they? I like this question. Do you think? And by the way, someone's name is Captain and Coke. I could probably use that right now. Do you guys think they should trade out of the third? Let's just say Sanders and Ward are not there. Do you trade out or do you pick Hunter?
I think you hope a team overpays you for Travis Hunter because
Okay.
he's like arguably the most talented player along with Genty in this class. If there's a team out there that's like, oh, we need to get this guy to sell some tickets or something, you can get an absolute haul for number 3. If you drop back a few picks, you might still be able to get an Abdul Carter or even Mason Graham, depending on what happens. I think unless the Browns pass up on a quarterback, which would be a very Cleveland Browns thing to do, then you probably trade down from 3. I like the prospect of Travis Hunter, but he just doesn't really. The Giants are so Swiss cheese right now in terms of holes on the roster. They need to get as many picks as possible. So I think if you get a good enough King's ransom for a team that wants Travis Hunter, you trade down.
Appreciate the sub, Captain and Coca. By the way, of course, as I mentioned before, sub to Nick's Cast and Pinstripe Chronicles. Like, to me, maybe this is my hollow-minded shit before I do, like, super draft evaluations, is, like, obviously I was looking at Cam, I was looking at Shador, just options and stuff like that. But I'm looking at this roster like I did almost 3 years ago. I'm like, ugh, well, Campbell, okay, we do need a right tackle. Abdul Carter, yeah, you do need an edge rusher because Kayvon sucks.
Yeah.
But they're not gonna draft an edge rusher. Like I know that because they got Burns under contract. They're not gonna exploit Will Johnson. Okay, you could draft him because you fucked up the Banks pick. Like I will say this. I mentioned 2 points about the GM. Number one, can we all sit here and unanimously agree that Joe Schoen won with Gettleman's roster in 2022?
It wasn't Joe Schoen. It was Brian Daboll that coached them.
Yes.
If you look at Joe Schoen's moves, a lot of them were bad.
Glowinski.
Right. His moves were bad. His drafts were bad. I give the credit to Brian Daboll. He won Coach of the Year for a reason. Unfortunately, Brian Daboll has a bit of an ego on him.
Yes.
There he was smoking cigars and Mr. Cool Guy. But I'll tell you what, behind the scenes, Wink Martindale was the one that was masterminding a lot of those big-time wins. The incredible win over the Ravens, the incredible win over the Packers. A lot of that was Wink Martindale. And I don't think Daboll liked the attention that Wink Martindale was getting. Also, I don't think he liked the praise that he was getting. I don't think he liked the credit he was getting because I think Wink wanted all the credit himself.
Don't forget, you guys had Fabian Moreau as your second cornerback.
Yeah, I remember
that team had no business winning 9 games. Let's be perfectly honest here. Like the roster now is probably better than the roster was in 2022.
Yeah.
And this team just won 3 games. So what was going right in 2022 that helped us win 9 games? Well, you had that defense that was somehow terrible for like 2.5 to 3 quarters.
Wink Martindale.
Yeah, and then the fourth quarter, Wink Martindale turned it up. You had Saquon, and even Daniel Jones was playing completely out of his mind that year in the clutch moments. You had Isaiah Hodgins stepping up. It was that next man up mentality, and it was coaching that was getting the job done. And maybe it is an ego thing because Daboll's like, oh, I just won with arguably one of the worst rosters, one of the youngest rosters in all of football, and now we're going to have a chance to draft our own guys and build the roster our way. I can't lose here. And we've won a combined 9 games since. So maybe it is an ego thing. Maybe he needs to get chubby again. I don't know what it is about Brian Daboll, but Ozempic Dabes is just not the same guy that he was 2 years ago. Even last year, the team was better under him. It's crazy that they've just completely nosedived the way they have after 2022. I don't think I've ever seen that.
They undervalued what Saquon meant. They rode Saquon like Seabiscuit the first half of that year. They did. He had like 30 carries a game. It was just him out there. They weren't using Daniel Jones that much, but they rewrote the narrative. Once Daniel Jones had those 2 great games, one against the Colts and one against the Vikings in the playoffs, they rewrote the narrative right on the fly that it was actually him. But in reality, Saquon Barkley was the one that was helping Daniel Jones look mediocre, and because he carried the whole thing on his back. And just ask the locker room. Now the locker room liked Daniel Jones because he's a good guy and he's a leader, but the locker room knew that Saquon Barkley was the real leader of that organization. He was the one that was carrying that offense, and Joe Schoen couldn't take it because he undervalued him. He undervalued what he meant to the locker room, and he undervalued what he meant to that offense. Because just look at what Kayvon Thibodeau said. He's like, yeah, we're unhappy that Saquon's gone. Remember, he was really open about it.
Yeah.
So I think that was an interesting example that of how lost they are as an organization. But I think that I think Daboll had a huge ego on him, and he couldn't handle having Wink there. Now, yeah, I know that behind the scenes, I don't think Wink had any respect for Brian Daboll at all, but he probably has a better insight than all of us as to the kind of show that he was running behind the scenes. I don't think it was a good show, Brian Daboll. I don't think he was running a good show last year at all.
6 wins off of that. And also I may add one thing because like people will be like, well, you could keep Joe Shane. He's done a decent. I'm just trying to like make up arguments because there's like a minority of people saying this, like, oh, GMs get new head coaches all the time. Well, the one I could think of is Howie Roseman, and Howie Roseman's been quite successful. His drafts are phenomenal. He's been with the Eagles since 2010 as the general manager. So he's been under Andy Reid, Chip Kelly, Doug Peterson, and now Nick Sirianni. I mean, he has a Super Bowl out of that. But and obviously multiple playoff appearances, 2 Super Bowl appearances. But like, do we realize how many drafts like he's just rocked? And also, may I add that Joe Shane said after 2022 they want to close the gap. Well, we didn't win against any of our divisional opponents this year. So did we really close a gap?
It made the gap larger.
We just widened that gap.
Yeah, like at least we used to beat the Commanders. Now we can't beat them. And to go back to an earlier point, it's interesting because like the pre-bye week Giants, had they had Kirk Cousins, probably won like 3 or more games or something like that. Like, if they just had a mediocre quarterback, they probably would have beat Washington. They would have beat Dallas. They might have beaten Cincinnati. They definitely would have beaten Carolina.
True.
That's 4 more wins right there, and the New Orleans game with the mediocre quarterback, you win that game. Like they would have had another 4 or 5 wins with just a solid QB. I'm not even talking about like a top 10, not even top 15. If it was just a guy that was just slightly above average to average, they would have had 4 or 5 more wins. And Daboll's not even having this conversation right now about firing the head coach. That's what Joe Shane did to this team this year. Completely botched the quarterback position the way he did. It's not, look, I've said it before and I won't shy away from it. I was a support. Daniel Jones won me over in 2022. I wasn't a fan of his before that, and I'm not going to take my comments back. There's proof of it on this platform. But he's coming off of another year where he hurt his neck and he hurt his ACL. I know you had a lot of money invested in him, but shouldn't you have protected your own ass with that out after year 2 and that injury clause? And your idea of a backup was Drew Lock, and the other backup was Tommy DeVito, who was just a meme because he was Italian. Like, this is what we had the worst quarterback room and probably in the history of the NFL this year. Yeah. And those were the options at quarterback. When Russell Wilson just wanted a chance to compete for much less money, they said no. Jameis Winston, they said no. You could have tried to patch things up with Tyrod Taylor, who would have clearly been the best quarterback on this team. They said no. And that's why I'm like, I'm not supporting it, but if they just had a Kirk Cousins this year, they would have been probably like a 7 or 8 win team. Yeah. And the same thing last year, had they just gotten like a couple of plays their way, the Jet game, the Buffalo game, that Rams game, they would have had another 3 wins. They would have won 9 games. So that's why I don't want to put this all on Daboll, because I feel like he's been given such a shit show to work with. I know the ego is definitely there, and I feel like he lost the locker room a bit this year, but like, look at what he was given to him by the GM. I feel like the relationship between him and Shane is actually soured. So yeah. I don't know if can you patch that up? You might have to, if you keep Daboll, you might have to move on from Shane. I feel like there's some tension there because Hard Knocks told you a lot. Body language, whenever they'd ask Daboll, like, oh, do you want to start Daniel Jones? He'd be like, Jones is the quarterback. But if you like read the body language, he never wanted that. Like, I just feel like it was Mara and Shane that kind of forced, maybe more so Mara that just forced it on him because they won 6 games with DeVito and Taylor last year. They won a game 2 weeks ago with Drew freaking Lock and played at the greatest game apparently by a Giants quarterback ever, which a lot of that was Malik Neighbors after the catch. Let's not say Drew Lock just had the best game ever by a quarterback, but it's just, I feel like there's something there still with Daboll because look at what he's had to deal with at his quarterback position the last 2 years. An injured Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito and Tim Boyle. I mean, it stinks. It's a terrible situation to be in.
Brian Daboll is much better at his job than Joe Shane is better at his job. I think that's without a doubt. Now, Lucas obviously he's not a Giant fan, but the Jets situation is very interesting. So I want to ask you something, man.
Yeah.
About the Jets.
Yeah, of course.
What the hell are you going to do at the coaching situation? Because now Vrabel's probably going to be going to the Patriots. Is there a coach that you have in mind? And what the hell are you going to do with Aaron Rodgers?
Well, I actually want to piggyback off of Rob's point. I think there's, in my opinion, I don't know. This is like I just had an epiphany for like a second. What if John Mara holds a private meeting with Joe Schoen in one meeting, Brian Daboll in the other, and says, "Okay, what really happened?" Joe Schoen throws Brian Daboll under the bus. Brian Daboll throws Joe Schoen under the bus. Who does he believe at that point?
Joe Schoen.
Yes, Shoshin. He always believes the general manager. Because Jerry Reese was a snake and he threw Tom Coughlin under the bus. And instead of trusting the Hall of Fame head coach, he trusted his moronic general manager. He tends to believe his general manager.
Who got his resume from Ernie Accorsi.
We got it from Ernie Accorsi. Yeah.
And I know
one draft class in 07.
Yep.
Just one.
And basically, Brian Daboll won with Gelman's rosters. You guys were most saying, not that, as you said, Daboll did a great coaching job. Armin mentioned kind of a similarity with the Jets. Rex Ryan won with Eric Mangini and Mike Tannenbaum's teams. But to piggyback back of Donald, I know this is really a giant stream, but Donald asked me, so I have to answer. I want no part of Aaron Rodgers next year. I think he can go. I think you start taking your medicine next year. I think you cut him pre-June 1st. Save some money. You eat the cap. As I said, take the medicine. You cut Devontae Adams as well. And now that Vrabel's going to the Patriots, probably could be Brian Flores that goes to Patriots. You never know. Could be a mix-up. But apparently Vrabel, according to a CBS reporter, a very well-known reporter at that, said that he used the Jets for leverage. I would go, and this is not a popular opinion because a lot of people want the experienced head coach, and it's rightfully so. I don't think there's a lot of great experienced head coaches. I would not go after Brian Flores. Cliff Kingsbury is an option, but my top two candidates are Todd Monken and Liam Cohen. Cohen of the OC of the Bucks, and Todd Monken, well-known OC of the Baltimore Ravens, which Lamar Jackson might win MVP again.
But what about quarterback? If you let Aaron Rodgers go, it's realistically a 2 quarterback draft. You're not in position to get those 2 quarterbacks.
You're not. You're absolutely right.
What would you do at quarterback?
If it was up to me, I think next year you obviously hire the coach. There's again, I brought this up to you guys. If the Vikings are taking calls on JJ McCarthy, if they really believe Sam's their guy, I'd take that phone call and say, hey, you know what? We want McCarthy. What do you want us to give you? And work out some negotiations. We're not going to be the only team probably in on him. So at the end of the day, McCarthy's an option, but you could do Tyron and Jameis, split half a season, and then draft a quarterback in 2026. Next year, you're rebuilding the cap. You're trying to change the culture. Rodgers is not that guy. You're trying to set the foundation for the future. You could make the playoffs the Jets could pull a Steelers this year. They could have really good coaching next year. Grab a guy like Russell Wilson or Justin Fields or a Tyrod or Jameis and, really overachieve next year. But their focus should be in 2026, drafted a quarterback. Drew Aller, Miller Moss, Garrett Nussmeier. Those are some guys.
Drew Aller's all right. I'm not a big fan of Nussmeier.
I'm more high on Nuss, but I have to obviously break down the film. And of course, we could definitely be there if the Giants suck in 2025 and they don't take a quarterback. And then they fire Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. So, Li, you don't need to trade for Justin Fields. He's an incoming free agent.
Yeah, he's gonna be. Yeah,
this guy in his trades, man. I tell you,
the Darnold situation will be very interesting.
Yeah, he's gonna get paid. I think a lot.
If I were the Vikings, I would actually extend Darnold. If I were the Vikings, I don't know what Darnold would be like in another organization because I think that he's very much a product of being coached very, very well by Kevin O'Connell. I think that has been a big boost for him. If you send him, say, back to the Jets without any good coaching, what would happen to him? I think it's a good situation for him, the Vikings. He's got great receivers that he can throw to, the best receiver in football he can throw to, and I think he's got a really good running back in Aaron Jones. I think it's a good situation for him, and I also think that he's probably better than McCarthy because I don't trust McCarthy's arm. I'm not a big fan of McCarthy's arm. I like Darnold's arm. I think Darnold's got a really good arm.
It
Yeah.
just, I was going to pull up a comment here from Tag is 43 million. Damn, that's more expensive than a few years ago. Daniel P says, "You guys are so weird. Who would have hired Dan Quinn? The Jets would have laughed. Doesn't matter if you don't have a quarterback." I'll be honest. I don't know what point I'm supposed to get out of that. I'll be completely honest.
Dan Quinn's a good coach.
Dan Quinn's a good coach, but I will also say it's going to be a lot of people are going to have eyes on Dan Quinn if and when Cliff Kingsbury leaves.
Yeah,
that's just
you also need a leader of men.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be the theme of this offseason. Vrabel, Brian Flores, Saleh when he's a defensive coordinator. I think it's going to be leader of men. That's the theme you're going to get. So to end off this show, I'm going to assume that Joe Schoen is coming back like we all want.
Alex, 1 second.
Sure.
Can I show who the Giants are ran by real quick? I'm trying to find the image tab right here.
Okay. So as Luca pulls up the image tab, wherever that may be, I'm assuming that Joe Schoen is going to come back. And I'm going to assume... I'm going to make this slight assumption, just in case that Brian... Luca found it?
Yeah, this is who the New York Giants are ran by.
I'm scared. I've not seen it yet.
Hold on.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, my God.
A fucking upside down show. Get this shit off my screen.
That's pretty good.
Oh, my God.
No, thank you.
What is that puppet? What is that supposed to be?
I don't know.
I've never seen that before.
The reason I brought it up is those guys' names are Shane and David. As opposed to Shane and David.
Oh, that's close. Wow.
Christ.
I thought it was like a Blues Clues ripoff or something.
Top 2 or 3 candidates you'd like as head coach. I'll go last. I'll start with Luca, then go to Rob, then go to Donald.
Okay, so for the Jets, I'm going to go Todd Monken, Liam Cohen, and Joe Brady. If I was a Giant fan, I don't think Brian Flores is coming. Maybe you hire a Cliff Kingsbury. Maybe. But Kingsbury is also going to want his quarterback, so would he really want to live with a bridge for 1 year? I don't know, because it's interesting. It's like I hate to take long on this. The Giants are in one direction. They've mostly hired offensive coaches. The Jets have mostly hired defensive coaches. So should one go the opposite route? Should the Giants hire a defensive coach for once?
I think if Vrabel was on the table, you definitely would get a defensive coach. I think I would have loved Vrabel, but I don't know if he's gonna come. I think he's gonna go to New England. Sir Rob.
Yeah, I mean, I would have Vrabel right there. It seems like that's almost a foregone conclusion at this point. They fired Mayo after 1 year. I would love Ben Johnson. I just don't know why he would want to come to this team. I wish we were just a little bit of a better situation to entice him, because that guy would be a phenomenal. I feel like he'd be the right guy. I like Kingsbury. I feel like there's something there with him still. I would probably have Johnson and Kingsbury, and I like the idea of Flores, because maybe we do need to go defensive minded, because we haven't done that. Our last coach before Daboll was Joe Judge, and I don't even know what the hell what did he coach with special teams with New England?
Teams.
Yeah, so that didn't work. We hired Shermer, who was offensive, but he was really given that job based off of his work with Case Keenum. So maybe it is time to go defensive, because even Coughlin was a special teams guy and a receivers coach. So maybe it is time to go the defensive route. So I feel like maybe Flores would be the right choice.
Okay. Sir Donald.
Yeah, actually, I kind of agree with Rob's suggestions there. So that would be either of the Lions assistants. I like Glenn as well. I know that the Lions' defense hasn't been great the last few weeks, but they're also playing severely underhanded because their star defensive end is hurt and Hutchinson, but they've still found a way to win every single week, and they're doing a pretty good job this week. But preferred Johnson, he's unbelievable. So those either the Lions assistants or Flores. I've always kind of liked Flores, and I felt that if I was in charge, it's not Monday morning quarterback, but uh, to rewind, I actually preferred Flores to Daboll, um, because at least he had some head coaching experience at the time. So I like him. What he's done with the Vikings is unbelievable, considering where the Vikings were just a couple of years ago with a very embarrassing defense. For Flores to come in and make it really, really good, he is a very good coach. And I've always been a fan of Vrabel. Vrabel, I've always been a fan of him. But I don't think he's going to go to the Giants. But I'm a big fan of him. I think he's a very, very good coach. Very good. To be honest, I would go a little bit different. All we have ever done is hire offensive coordinators to be head coach. I would maybe go a little bit different, and I would go and have a defensive coordinator as a head coach, and then hire a very good offensive mind that can just run his own offense, uh, and try that. Have your defensive coordinator oversee the whole organization. Then you focus on a good offensive mind that can just run. Oh, you got River. There's always a Riverboat Ron Rivera is out there.
On that idea.
Riverboat Ron. I would have considered him in the couple of previous coaching cycles ago when Gettleman was looking for a head coach. I think Ron Rivera was someone that was linked with him, but not now. But I think the ones that I mentioned kind of jump out as the best coaching candidates.
Yeah. Disciplined defensive coach. Yeah, I wouldn't do Ron Rivera. If the Giants fired Daboll and Schoen, how good does his job look? I say no one would, because they would be fired another duo. Well, I mean, like, again, they need a good draft position. Like, it's not just about, like, that's the way the Giants are looking at it. I'm not looking at it that way. You were saying, Rob?
I was going to say that even though the situation's so bad at they keep firing a duo, that job actually would be enticing for a new GM and coach to try to fix it. That's exactly why Daboll and Shane took it, because let's pretend the Giants situation was any good after 2021. I mean, we all remember the kneel down and inside their own 5-yard line. That was one of the worst looks for an NFL team ever, and yet two guys from a winning organization decided they wanted to come over here and try to fix this. So it would be enticing. It's still New York. It's still it's still a franchise that's been around for 100 years. People are gonna want to take that job if it's a fresh start. I know it doesn't look. It looks terrible. Trust us. We watched 17 games of this absolute fucking disaster, but someone will a duo will take this if they're given free reign to do it their way, and the owner steps out. I feel like John Mara did that at first and then got back in the way after how well year one went. I feel like that's what we're kind of dealing with right now. If they get a new coach and GM, he's got to step out of the way completely and let them do their thing. But that job would be enticing if it's a fresh start.
Yeah. Nah, I wouldn't do Antonio Pierce. Maybe for like a linebacker coach or something, but
maybe even defensive coordinator.
Maybe defensive coordinator, because I think he did that in college.
Yeah, I love Antonio Pierce. I love what he brings. I think he brings a lot of fire. Don't know, not maybe necessarily as a head coach, but yeah, I love the fire that he brings.
Luca,
outside the box thinking real quick. You guys you don't want to hire a college coach?
Nah,
I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Dan Lanning, maybe from Oregon.
Good coach, very good coach. Oregon had a great year.
Let's stick to the NFL. That's me. That's me, though. My top.
I wouldn't dismiss it. I think that's a really good suggestion, Luca, because it's an outside the box thought, and the Giants need outside the box thinking.
I was possibly saying like Dan Lanning, maybe Matt Campbell from Iowa State, who I've had my eyes on for years, who actually rejected the Jets job a few years ago. So it'll be Lanning, Matt Campbell. I'm trying to think of other candidates. I don't know. I don't think Ryan Day is getting fired, and I don't think he's leaving. Marcus Freeman's not leaving Notre Dame. I don't think you guys want Bill O'Brien, do you?
No, you're funny.
Let's see.
Hell of a GM he is.
Yeah, after Lanning and Campbell, there's no coach that I'd honestly believe that's ready for the NFL level, in my opinion, unless I'm missing somebody. And you guys don't want Dion, correct?
No.
A lot of people keep saying like, "Oh, Shador's going to pull an Eli because of who his dad is," but haven't they kind of put all those rumors to rest? Because everyone was like, "There's no way Shador's going to want to go play for the Giants. They stink," and he wore cleats with the logo on it. So like, I think that whole rumor has kind of been shit on. Like I think he's going to play for whoever drafts him because
Exactly.
let's be honest. This is a pretty terrible quarterback class compared to what we had last year and even the year prior. This is a Shador Sanders. Apparently, there's no scouts are giving him a first round grade. Yet he's the second best quarterback in this class. So I don't think he's in a position to pull an Eli and be like, I'm not playing for you, Tennessee. I'm not playing for you, Cleveland. Like I don't think he would do that. I don't think Dion would. I don't think Dion's that kind of a father. I'm not saying Archie's kind of a dick or anything, but like I don't think Dion would do that. He's got a chance for his kid to be the number 1 or 2 pick in the draft. I don't think he's going to be like, no, you're gonna trade my son after you. I don't think they would pull that.
Plus, that's a crap ton of money. You go. I mean, if you're not obviously number 1's the highest draft slot, and you're earning a ton of money. But let's just say he gets traded to the Giants number 3rd pick. He's losing money by that way.
Yeah. Yeah, point.
Here's a suggestion. What about Pete Carroll?
My age is the only problem with my age. The age of Pete Carroll is my only issue with him.
Is he in his 70s?
72?
Okay. I mean, on a short term,
73.
maybe 2-year, 3-year deal at the most.
You gotta, in my opinion, if you're gonna hire Pete Carroll, have him for 2 to 3 years at most, and have somebody succeed him.
Yes, like he would need to have a really young assistant that's ready for the job once Carroll retires in say 2 years. So someone that he readies that he can mentor during that 2 years. That's not the worst suggestion because Carroll's a hell of a coach. He is a phenomenal coach.
Is this the first year that we're only paying one head coach? Because we've had to keep paying like multiple coaches because we keep firing everybody. Maybe they want to avoid that. Maybe that's why they're going to hold on to Daboll for 2 more years because they gave him a 5-year deal, right?
Let's see, 20.
Yeah, they did. They gave him 5 years.
Wait, 20.
Maybe you give Carroll.
This should have been the last year they paid Judge if they gave him a 5-year. 2020, 2021, 22, 23, 24.
Yeah, so this will be the last year that we're paying multiple head coach unless they fire Daboll and hire another one. That's why I think they're staying. Like I think they're both staying because I don't think Mara wants to keep doing this, paying multiple coaches in the same year.
Yeah, didn't I overhear that was an issue? That John Mara has an issue with the NFL about that?
I wouldn't put it past him. John Mara's got an issue about a lot of things.
Yeah, but I don't think he likes the dead money on coaches. That was something that I read.
I wouldn't be surprised. But my top 3 are Mike Vrabel, Liam Cohn, and Ben Johnson. So obviously Mike Vrabel, everybody knows who he is. The Bucks offensive coordinator, and then obviously the Lions offensive coordinator. But that's that. What do you think about Saban? Nah, I wouldn't give. Saban was in the college game a long time. Plus, he's like almost 70, if he's not 70 already.
Yeah, and that Miami tried that and it fell flat in its face. So
I believe he was like 7-9 in his first season. And then
Yeah.
someone
Matt
suggested
has an issue also.
um,
Alex, here's another name that was floated out. You guys wouldn't hire Steve Sarkisian from Texas?
I feel like that would force us to get Quinn Ewers, and I don't want Quinn Ewers.
I'm gonna go in line with Rob's thinking. I mean, he does have NFL experience because he was the OC after Shanahan left for the Falcons, but from the Falcons. But yeah, I'm gonna. And then someone mentioned Al Golden. I mean, he was head coach at Temple in Miami. He's probably better off in the the lower divisions of college. I don't think he could probably make a good defensive coordinator in the NFL. I just don't know if he would be a great.
Would you go the route of, like, let's say you get a rookie head coach, do you hire like 2 former coaches as his coordinators, like Saleh as a defensive coordinator, and then
Got to hire at least one.
yeah, that would kind of
that's what
help.
Daboll did right. He hired Wink. Like
Yeah,
the
it
Jets,
would help the process out.
because the Jets hired Ulbrich and they hired LaFleur, who were not previous coordinators.
They were not previous head coaches. That was the problem.
Yeah. So I would say probably your strongest DC candidate, if you do fire Daboll, is probably Robert Saleh.
No, it's Alex. It's actually Rex Ryan because he runs a 3-4.
Oh yeah, that's right. I keep forgetting Saleh as a. We might
Is
need to
that-
change the fucking defense after all, because like we're not succeeding in a 3-4. Like
Yeah, maybe we just try 4-3.
why not? Like our run defense sucks anyway.
I feel like that it might actually help, because I think if you put Kayvon just on the line, that might actually help him out, because he's much better in the run game than anything else, because he apparently can't get to the quarterback. So
It's not a bad shout.
You might as well just have to proportion.
You need to draft some help for Dexter Lawrence, but
Yeah.
Mason Graham.
Boom.
Alex, how about Jim Leonard?
The Wisconsin guy.
Yeah, he's the defensive backs coach for the Denver Broncos. Promote him to DC.
Okay, that's fine then. Yeah, Lou Anarumo. I wouldn't. Just because he's from Staten Island doesn't really make me appealing to him. But with that being said, 2 hours 11 minutes. I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank Rob and Donald for coming on. Please sub up to the Pinstripe Chronicles. They're doing great things over on that channel. The Yankified podcast obviously debuted yesterday. They're live during the week with Uncle Tats. If you haven't already subbed to this channel, sub to Nick's Cast. We're less than 10 subs away from 2,200. But we appreciate you guys for living in misery with us and tolerating our bullshit. We appreciate you guys, and we will talk to you